6 o'clock news now on BBC One with Martyn Lewis and Moira Stuart.
Sleaze dominates the agenda again as the election campaign proper gets underway. John Major said if MPs had misbehaved, they should be dealt with, but he would not bow to the witch hunt mentality. 4 Palestinians, including 2 suspected suicide bombers, have died in more violence along the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The Hillsborough tragedy, relatives call for another inquiry after what they say is new video evidence. And a miraculous escape for the baby at the races. Good evening. The Prime Minister has said that Conservative MPs who've denied allegations of sleaze should be able to stand as candidates at the general election, but he warned that he'd support punishment for anyone found guilty of misbehaviour. Mr Major renewed his challenge to Tony Blair to take part in a live television debate and accused him of running away from a head-to-head confrontation. Labour responded by blaming the Tories for frustrating talks about the debate. The Liberal Democrats this afternoon announced that they're ready to go along with Labour's suggestion to try to find a single independent anti-corruption candidate to stand against the Conservative Neil Hamilton in Tatton.
Punch and Judy is what the Liberal Democrats called it, and they put some puppets on display. Tony Blair and John Major, they claimed, were getting nowhere in the argument over sleaze. All the main parties claimed they wanted to move on to other issues, but this morning they didn't really try. John Major took a string of questions on the subject and asked for more. He passionately defended the right of Neil Hamilton to stand for election if he was backed by his local party.
I happen to care about the reputation of Parliament in the short term and the long term, and if people have misbehaved, then it must be dealt with. But I am not going to bow to the witch hunt mentality of saying that anybody who faces unsubstantiated charges must leave public life, and no doubt in a small paragraph in a paper 6 months later, people will report that they were sorry the charges were untrue.
Mr Major contrasted his approach with the Labour view that if Mr Blair had been in charge, Neil Hamilton would have been sacked. Labour this morning blamed Mr Major for weak leadership. In their view, the Conservatives couldn't complain that the issue was still being given prominence.
I do say that the Conservatives have brought this issue upon themselves. That they have suppressed the report at the end of the parliamentary term that could have laid it to rest. Even last night, Mr Major's again writing letters. On Sunday, they want their members of Parliament to stand down. On Monday, they back away from it. On Tuesday, we're not quite sure what they're doing. Now, if they continue to behave in this way, it's hardly surprising that it is an issue.
Paddy Ashdown wanted to make only a passing reference to it, but he still couldn't resist slipping the dagger in.
Now, that's not to say that sleaze, which was a very big issue, cash for questions, very big issue, it may come back again, we may wish to comment on it. But it is our intention to try and move these on to the other issues, because we believe that everything that needs to be known about the weakness of the Prime Minister's leadership and the individuals involved is now known.
At his home in Cheshire, the man at the centre of the argument, Neil Hamilton, was avoiding the press. But the Liberal Democrats announced this afternoon that their candidate in Tatton would match the pledge made last week by the Labour candidate. Both of them are now prepared to step down if a non-party candidate stands on the anti-sleaze platform.
What we are doing from today is joining the search for a credible, independent, anti-corruption candidate who could potentially represent all the voters of Tatton who are so fed up with Mr Hamilton.
In this unprecedented move, both the Liberal Party and the Labour Party are saying that they will step up the search for a suitable and independent anti-corruption candidate that I believe will command the confidence of the people of Tatton and defeat Mr Hamilton.
John Major did try today to move off the issue by talking about the failed negotiations to set up a television debate among the party leaders. In his strongest language yet, he accused Mr Blair of chickening out.
Turkeys may not vote for Christmas, but chickens apparently run away from broadcasts. I have accepted the proposals. It is up to the Labour Party to see whether they will, or whether we'll have the sort of weasel words we've had from them over the last few weeks to find an excuse for not doing so.
But the other party leaders brushed aside Mr Major's comments. Labour complained that he only raised the issue of the television debate when he was in trouble, and they're convinced that Mr Major is still in serious trouble over the unresolved case of Neil Hamilton, who's denied accepting cash for asking parliamentary questions. John Sargent, BBC News, Westminster.
The Scottish Secretary, Michael Forsyth, appeared on the campaign trail for the first time today and faced a flood of questions about the recent difficulties within the Scottish Tory party. In the past week, the MP for Eastwood, Alan Stuart, and the party chairman in Scotland, Sir Michael Hirst, have both resigned amid controversy over their private lives. Our Scotland political editor, Brian Taylor, reports.
Michael Forsyth had always intended to defer the Scottish Tories' campaign launch until after Easter. He didn't choose the circumstances. A party in turmoil following the resignation of their chairman, Sir Michael Hirst, who admitted indiscretions in his private life.
Who's next, yes?
The new chairman, Annabel Goldie, today blamed Tory malcontents for spreading gossip to prevent Sir Michael winning the nomination for Eastwood, Scotland's safest Tory seat. Mr Forsyth said he'd no knowledge of that, but conceded the row was damaging.
Well, I could have planned it better. Of course it's a setback. Michael Hirst was a key element in our campaign, a formidable campaigner and someone I was relying on very considerably.
Opposition leaders in Scotland, like Jim Wallace of the Liberal Democrats, backed Mr Forsyth in his plea to shift the election away from sleaze.
The private lives of individuals should have no part in our election campaign. That is my view as leader, and it's one which I expect the party to follow. Indeed, talking to colleagues, there's no appetite whatsoever to go down that road.
Labour endorses that, but questions Mr Forsyth's control of his own party in Scotland.
But I do find it slightly puzzling why Scotland's Tory party leader doesn't even seem to notice that there is an uncontrollable, undignified civil war going on in his own party.
As he met party workers, the SNP leader said campaigning around Scotland had convinced him voters were sick of sleaze.
People haven't been asking about individuals' private lives in the Tory party or elsewhere. They've been asking about what policies do you have for the future of Scotland.
Tonight, opposition parties accuse Mr Forsyth of speeding up a Scottish jobs announcement, 5,000 jobs in a banking call centre, to deflect attention from the Tories' troubles. Mr Forsyth denies that, but he'll be happy if the election campaign can return to arguments over jobs and the economy rather than sleaze. Brian Taylor, BBC News, at the Scottish office in Edinburgh.